Hello, this is Randy Wooden, and this is the Wooden Desk. So glad that you joined me today. Pull up a chair. I pray that something I say will be a blessing to you and your leadership team. Today, I want to begin to tackle a subject that we know about, but I don't know that it's practiced often. And the title of this series is called Be Still. Be Still. It's ultimately the gift of silence. It's one of the disciplines within the disciplines, if you've ever studied the different active disciplines that you can have in your life personally. But for me, silence is one of those things that doesn't necessarily come easy. Being still doesn't come easy to me. I'd like to tell a little bit of personal story leading into this lesson today as I begin to tackle a subject that I'm learning more and more is essential to our inner health and to our health as leaders. Um, I know that after 36 years of full-time pastoral ministry, 4 years of ministry prior to that, and then 7 years of secular work in the Chicago area, I realized that I had been working for right at 44 years full-time, doing work, being active, going and doing my best to, as a lot of people would say, get ahead and to make a difference, of course, doing ministry. But especially the last 3 or 4 years of ministry became very difficult. I hit a wall. Some would call it burnout. Some would call it just, getting to the place that you're just more poured out than poured in, which is not ever a healthy place to be. But I remember finding myself after 2 heart attacks and a lot of pastoral stress and some of the organizational transitions we were going through, finding myself fighting depression, fighting discouragement, fighting physically to get back where I needed to be. And after 20, almost 26 years at the same ministry, really had a burden, and my greatest passion was doing what I'm doing, developing leaders, helping churches, helping pastors, and was feeling pulled out, but at the same time realizing that it was essential. That I was hearing from God, and that I was not making a decision just based in emotions or an escape route of just getting out of the pressure, even though the decision I made did relieve some pressure. But in 2019, toward the end of 2019, I resigned my current assignment as the pastor of the church and took a whole year off. Matter of fact, I made a commitment to God and myself that I was going to be still. I was going to not preach, teach, and of course, that didn't mean I wasn't going to pray and keep my studies up and read. And during that year, that's exactly what I did. I probably spent a lot of time on the lake in a boat with a fishing rod. Really, it was a plus if I caught fish, but that wasn't my prime thing that I was trying to do. I was just trying to get still. And I can remember during the especially 2020 season, I get up before sunrise and sit on the lake as the sun was coming up and do a time of worship and just sit there and be still and be silent. It was during that time or during that whole year, that I was able to begin to get some restoration and some healing in my mind and my spirit, begin to recognize some things that need to be recognized. And the only way that was possible was getting still. Now, one of the things I realized after sitting there during that year of taking time off, that I should have never allowed myself to get to that place, that I had to have a year off or that I had hit a wall. And I'm not going to tell you it was easy, and emotions that were going on, felt some failure and felt like I let a lot of people down that I had given my life to. And I loved pastoral ministry. It wasn't a matter I hated it. I loved people, and just transitioning where we were and where I was physically, emotionally. I knew that this was probably the best thing. As my wife said later, I'm grateful you took the time off, even though it was difficult on her and I, and one of the hardest parts as we transitioned to another state and transitioned away from our kids and our grandkids. Not that we didn't go back and forth and visit and stay connected with them daily, but the issue was that was very difficult. And my wife said, "I'm just grateful that we're in a place of rest and healing." She said, because the worst thing could have been is me having to have done your funeral. And I kind of felt like that's where I was headed. Now that may seem an extreme when I begin to talk about getting still. But one of the things I learned there in this time, that probably the thing that has got to happen in any leader's life, if they're going to sustain emotional health, the physical health, and even their spiritual health and vibrance, is to take times to be still. Now, I could go into talking about sabbatical here. I could talk about days off and what we do, but this thing of stillness and the gift of silence is very important. Part of that is getting the noise out of your life, getting all the voices at times that are just the white noise and on. It seems like it's screaming. It takes time to get that out and then to get into a place of rest. I remember hearing one leader, there was a great book, I could recommend it to you. It's called The Soul Keeper. And its essence, he talks about in that book that the essential health of a leader is to remove hurry out of their life. It's not, I've come to the conclusion that hurry does not always equal, or busyness in hurry does not always equal effectiveness. Nor does it always make the impact we want it to make. Sometimes, if we're not careful, just being busy and active sometimes gives us this sense of fulfillment, which is not really that healthy. I think we have to work smarter, not harder, and you've heard that expression, of course. But I think part of this is getting still, the art of being still and being silent. Mother Teresa said this: "We need to find God, and he cannot be found in the noise and the restlessness. God is the friend of the silence. See how nature, trees, flowers, grass, grow in the silence. See the stars, the moon, the sun, how they move in silence. We need silence to be able to touch souls. We need silence to be able to touch souls." Well stated. I think so many times as I get into this series, I'm probably going to be talking about, again, I talked in a prior series about voices, but this is about silence, getting still, and yes, hearing. And all of this is so important. I've come to the conclusion that there are few people who know how to truly listen. That is a gift that we give. I heard one story about President Franklin Roosevelt, who had grown very weary of being in what he called receiving lines at the White House or the House functions. He said over the many years that he served, he said he complained that to his aides and to those who are closest to him, making the comment that nobody listens to you when they come through. They're shaking hands with you. They're nodding their heads. They're saying, "Well done, Mr. President. Congratulations, Mr. President. Good job, Mr. President." But none of them are listening. So on one occasion, unable to endure the boredom of another receiving line, he decided he was going to have a little bit of fun with his guests. Each person passed by the receiving line, shaking his hands, and Roosevelt whispered, "I murdered my grandmother this morning." Well, the guest replied, "Well, marvelous, Mr. President. Keep up the good work." Or, "God bless you, Mr. President." It wasn't until the end of the receiving line that the ambassador from Bolivia passed by that well-meaning words was heard. Without being flustered, the ambassador leaned over to President Roosevelt and responded, "Well, I'm sure she had it coming to her, Mr. President." Well, when I read something like that, I have to laugh sometimes because I really think that sometimes people really aren't listening to what we say. A matter of fact, there is an art to listening. How often in our lives are we hearing but not listening? And yet, whether it's our spouse or our kids or our colleagues or friends, how much of what they say are we really missing? And yet, how many times has God spoken to us, though we really didn't hear him? I mean, his wisdom and grace, how many times is it whispered into our ears, but only being blocked out by our busyness, our worry, thinking about what we need to say or what we need to do? And yet we've turned deaf ears to the message, unable to hear a still small voice in our hearts. See, just like radio signals or frequencies many a times are being broadcast, I believe that the voice of God is always speaking, but I think sometimes we have to get still in order to tune in and hear them. Without a doubt, we're in a day we've never been in. Right now, the Afghan forces and the Taliban, all of that's going on in the news. And of course, we're trying to remove Americans and the failures that have taken place and the blame that is going on. An earthquake in Haiti, 7.2, now over 1,500 dead. Not only that, but just the chaos in our own country and COVID and the variance is higher than it's ever been. And we're seeing on every end noise and chaos and confusion. And sometimes for today's organizational leader, and especially pastors that may be listening to this, can become overwhelmed with all of the stuff. And what I realize is more than ever before, we have got to get still. Not only have we got to get still, but we've got to listen. In school, we're taught communication skills, reading, writing, and speaking. Yet the most important secret of success of communication is not mentioned, and that is our ability to be able to listen. King Solomon said it like this in Ecclesiastes 5:1-2. When you go into the house of God, draw near to listen rather than to offer the words of fools. Draw near, slow down. Eliminating the interference and the static that is around each and every one of us, and tune into God. Again, I had some other leadership things, but I really felt directed today to tell you, and somebody may be hearing this, is if you're going to be successful, if you're going to go into the next season with the energy and be able to thrive the way God has ordained you have got to be still. Of course, David's words, maybe this is why David was a man after God's own heart. Psalms 46:10, be still and know that I am God. See, knowing who you are in God only allows you to know who you are and know where you're going. Yet I understand how important this is. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Maybe that means he wants us to hear twice as much as we talk. But yet that's impossible for some people. I've met many leaders who find it very difficult. And if you're sitting in the room, it's usually the 80-20 principle backwards. They're going to talk 80% of the time. You're going to listen. And you're going to try to talk 20% of the time, which you'll get interrupted within that 20%. And I'm going to tell you that that kind of leader is a leader who is going to miss some of the things that he needs to see as well as the things he needs to hear. I really believe how important this is that God is trying to speak. I think it was Steve Sample who said the average person suffers from 3 delusions. I thought this was funny. He says that he is a good driver, that he has a good sense of humor, and that he is a good listener. I wish that was true, but I've found that usually that last one is being a good listener is something that is an illusion to many people, but yet it is something we need to do. And the only way that that's possible is to be still. Maybe you can't hear because there's too much interference going on right now on the line. I remember, I'm going to date myself, but I remember my dad saying, go and move the rabbit ears on the TV so the reception and the picture would get clear, or we could hear it. And I'm thinking, oh Lord, how many of us need to stop and we need to move the ears back into place and position them in a place so that we're hearing God. We're hearing prophetically the Spirit. We're hearing what needs to be heard for leadership alignment. My God, this is so important. I hope you'll stay with me for this series. I look forward to what God is going to speak and say. And today I encourage you, be still. Be still. God bless you. May the kingdom of God be enlarged in you and all around you. God bless you and have a great day.